There are few parts of the state where water is so important to success, or so confusing. Think of this valley as the bottom of a prehistoric sea, basically a sandbar with layers and layers of sand and gravel. No wonder the 1983 earthquake altered groundwater so quickly. About as fast as you could say 7.3 on the Richter scale. And then there's the Big Lost River. It starts out strong, paralleling the Lost River Range for miles, before being temporarily corralled by Mackay Reservoir. Past Mackay, near the highly secret Idaho National Laboratory, the Big Lost River just vanishes.
In the Snake River Plain, there's a big pile of basaltic volcanic rocks, and these are really fractured, and they provide these pathways, and fluids are making their way down into the subsurface really efficiently. Instead of the water making its way all the way across to the Snake River like it really wants to, it just disappears as it hits the Snake River Plain and all those basalts.
Hydrologists say the water eventually makes its way to Thousand Springs near Hagerman to help replenish the Snake River. No one really knows how long it takes to get there, just that water does flow downhill. Here in the Lost River Valley, artesian springs are a real luxury, and that's certainly the case for Mackay Fish Hatchery, one of the state's oldest and most prolific.
It's all gravity feed. The spring, it just comes out of the ground by itself.
And it's a constant 52 degrees, even when the outside temperature is 20 below.
That's great for egg development as well as fish development. We do mainly trout, but we have kokanee salmon, which is a landlocked sockeye. We raise multiple strains of each species. We've got several strains of rainbows, several strains of cutthroat. We do cutthroat rainbow hybrids. For the mountain lakes, we raise another strain of rainbows and also goldens and grayling. We also raise brook trout here and what is now known as a tiger trout, which is a cross between a brown trout and a brook trout. We use tiger trout as a management tool. They're supposed to be very aggressive against undesirable fish wherever we put them. They're kind of a new tool, and they're in several lakes trying to do their job. We raise 90,000 catchable trout every year. The catchables that we do raise, and catchables being 10 to 12 inches long, go pretty much a 100-mile radius from here, all the way down to Ryrie Reservoir near Idaho Falls, up towards salmon. We do urban ponds around salmon as well as mountain lakes up in that area. So between these two regions, yeah, we go about a 100-mile radius. The majority of the numbers of fish that we raise leave here at about 3 inches as a fingerling. We raise all the fish for Henry's Lake, cutthroat, the hybrids, and the brook trout there. And the kokanee that we raise, they go pretty much statewide, all the way down towards Montpelier, all the way up into the Panhandle, all the way over to Lucky Peak, Anderson Ranch, and Arrow Rock, and those larger reservoirs.
Locals say the spring water near Mackay is the best drinking water around. In fact, it's so good that they even bottle it under the brand name Proud Source Water.
It has nothing to do with the runoff anywhere in this area. It's coming from deep down underneath us. This is truly an enclosed system. It's not connected to the Snake River or the salmon. It's not connected by any other major water in the state. It is amongst itself, and so that makes it unique.
Closer to Chalice, spring water has allowed another fish hatchery to flourish. Here the water is warm, so these are warm water fish, tilapia and sea bass.
These are sea bass. We're going to get them to brood so that we don't have to buy our barramundi sea bass from Australia. So we fly it in.
Christopher James came to this area more than 30 years ago, influenced by his strong religious beliefs and determined to make a difference.
When I came here, I knew that this land was to be a refuge. And so I started building a refuge there at Living Waters Ranch. And we have the ability, we have the infrastructure to be able to handle 1,000 people.
He has since branched out, raising cattle, growing fruits and vegetables, He and his wife also own a restaurant in downtown Challis.
Our only limitation is our imagination. And part of what we do is sustainable. So we're trying to get involved in the circle of God's creation. And there isn't anything that's wasted.
You can imagine that here in cowboy country, Christopher James stands out a bit. No matter, he's convinced he's got a calling to get ready for a troubling future.
The plan is to move ahead and to prepare to be able to handle many people. And my project is to be able to produce enough food for 40 or 50,000 people, even way out here in the desert. Really what I'm doing is just trying to be a benefit to the community. So we're interested in working together. We're not interested in owning everything. We're interested in partnering and working together for the community.
For many who live in the shadow of the Lost River Range, life can be a real struggle. This is, after all, fragile high desert country, where the cattle outnumber the humans. Here, the growing season is short, the winters often lonely and extreme, the search for water a constant concern. And the nearest city is about 100 miles away. Definitely no country for the faint of heart. But for those willing to venture off the beaten path, the other side of the mountain, the eastern side, can be a pleasant surprise. But first, you have to get there, and that's no easy task.
There was one rock after another, and I thought it couldn't get any worse, but it did. It got a lot worse.
For Kay Johnson, this trip is really a pilgrimage of sorts. He has ties to this area. His mother grew up not far from here in the Little Lost River Valley. This is his first time actually exploring these mountains. His goal today, a lake at the base of 12,000-foot Mount Idaho.
I saw a sign that said 2 hours. I made my mind up that I was going to make it in an hour. It's quite a climb. And then it got so steep that it was practically hand over foot to get up to the top. But we made it. And like every mountain lake, they're different. They're unique. They're special. You're never really certain when you're going to come to the lake, but it's usually a lot further than you thought it was going to be. This one is especially beautiful. Often we find a lot of mountain lakes that have brook trout in it. It's brook trout. Male and full spawning colors. This is what this lake has. In this case, it's a little bit overpopulated.
Idaho's second highest peak, Leatherman, points the way to another high mountain lake.
I really don't recall a more spectacular hike than the one into Pass Lake. Broad, sweeping vistas of meadows, very tall mountains with crevices filled with snow. It was just classic. It was something I thought we'd see in Canada, but not in Idaho, and here it is, right here. There were several meadows, but that one big one was the Sound of Music type of meadow. It was very spectacular. With the mountains in the background, it's just better than the Sound of Music. When I was hiking in, I was looking at the vegetation, and it just looked like something that we don't normally see in Idaho. There weren't any invasive weeds. It was just very, very pure. And then Pass Lake itself, crystal clear, deep, with a big mountain, solid, rugged rock right behind it. Very impressive. I really recommend it.
Aside from the named lakes, there are a handful of brilliant turquoise pools scattered throughout the backside. Like this one, right at the base of Mount Borah, the state's highest peak. This glacial lake doesn't really have a name, or a trail for that matter. And then there's the last couple hundred feet that requires an ascent up a steep scree slope.
I've never experienced in hiking in Idaho the geology that you see here, with the wonderful color of rocks. When I was talking to my friends about going on this trip, I was surprised how many people have never been to the Lost River Range or even driven by it, and they're missing something. I realized getting in this far is really rugged, but to look at those mountains, it's really a treat for every Idahoan if they just take the time.